Welcome to Electrified. It's your host, Dylan Loomis. Before I jump into it today, I just wanted to put it out there. If any of you guys are feeling overwhelmed with how fast things are moving in the AI world, all of these new models and the new tools, paired with all of the chatter about job loss or not, and all the different investment angles, I just want to say you're not alone. I am right there with you. I'm still working through how to handle all this as somebody that really likes to try to understand things and stay at the forefront. Right now, given the pace of everything, that really is impossible. Don't let yourself give in to FOMO. All of these new models might be a little bit better here and there, but at the end of the day, is it really going to alter your life if you use one model or the other? The answer is no. Enjoy the process, learn what you can. I'll do my best to play a very small role in that. And yeah, ultimately, I just wanted to be a voice that tells you if you're having those moments of overwhelm, like you can't keep up, you are certainly not alone. Maybe I should start a group like AI Addicts Anonymous or something like that. The AYA, we can call it. All right, that's enough. Let's get into it. If you missed it, Tesla is now limiting its AI token spend company-wide to $200 per week per engineer. However, there's some very important context I want to add to the conversation. You also need to know we're not that far removed from the token maxing era, where people like Jensen Huang were in interviews saying they want all of their engineers to basically spend as much as they can spinning up different agents, doing a bunch of autonomous work with a whole lot of sub-agents, and really maximizing the token use per employee. But as is often the case, the pendulum seemingly swung too far that way, and now it's swinging back.
A lot of people on the engineering side, software engineers in particular, were spending upwards of like several $1,000s a week on AI tokens. So definitely cutting back. It's also a larger trend in the industry.
$200 per week now. What was the cap before? Was there one?
There wasn't a cap from my understanding. It was kind of a free for all. There's this leaderboard where people could see like token usage. You could even see who the top token users were in your department. And in that way, I think they were kind of encouraging people to use more tokens. That leaderboard is still accessible to employees. And I think it's kind of having the reverse effect now of like maybe a board of shame, or, maybe there's this idea that like, okay, here is how much I'm costing the company. And what ways can I cut back? But Tesla has also allowed employees, and some exemptions. So, they can get more than that $200 a week, but it has to be approved by higher ups. So this way, I think it gives Tesla a little bit more control. A unique thing about working at Tesla is because you're so connected to Elon Musk's other companies, people at Tesla get to beta test early versions of Grok products. Earlier this year, they were testing Grok Build, which is like this larger developer platform. They're still testing different Grok products and actually working directly with XAI's product lead, Andrew Milich, who is talking to people, at Tesla, getting feedback, even troubleshooting issues. So with Grok beta versions of products, those are free, so they're not included in that $200 limit. Tesla engineers, the ones I've talked to at least, are not big Grok fans, and it
Mm.
seems like Claude Code and Codex are kind of the more popular products. We saw that like Elon Musk has actually been sending company-wide emails about like AI agents. He sent them a link about how to use AI agents. He sent them a link kind of encouraging them to use Composer, which is Cursor's coding model. And, as we know, Cursor and XAI, Cursor's joining SpaceX. So he's definitely been like encouraging AI use.
Frankly, I was a bit surprised to learn that Tesla didn't have AI spending caps earlier, given what we know about Tesla's capital controls. But that Lars interview on Brighter with Herbert was perfect timing because he explained exactly how Tesla is using AI internally. He said for a long time now, Tesla's software engineers have been using AI to build the base layer of code so they can focus on the harder problems. For this, Lars laid out 4 different categories. For one, just think about lessons learned. So anytime Tesla had a battery pack failure or a problem with an inverter or anything, previously an employee would have to go track down an engineer who knew what happened and get the information. But now Tesla has consolidated all of those errors and issues into a database that they have an agent for. So now Tesla engineers can just search in this database and get any piece of information they need. And importantly, Lars said this was not just for Tesla employees, but it helps their supply chain teams as well. The second category was spotting anomalies or certain trends with equipment machining. So we've known Tesla has plenty of leaderboards throughout the factories that tracks things like KPIs, KPCs, key product characteristics, and so on. So Tesla's been tracking the big data with software now, once again, for some time. But now Tesla has new AI tools that really refine this tracking and these leaderboards that help to spot much more subtle issues where certain numbers might start to slowly drift. So Tesla's leaderboards and all of the key indicators are now much more refined. The third area Lars highlighted was Tesla is now linking different systems together. Now, for some time, different systems have been communicating with each other, but they have not been reasoning with each other. But now these systems across departments are now thinking with each other. So if there's a downstream issue, that can automatically trigger an upstream correction. So rather than just sharing data across the company, it's now thinking about what this data actually means and what corrective actions need to be taken. And of course, doing that is going to help Tesla spot errors or defects much earlier in the process, saving the company money and time. One example Lars gave, at the end of the line, every single vehicle is now scanned and that data is automatically sent back to the stamping team and they're notified immediately if they need to adjust anything. And number 4 was once again on the lessons learned theme, but it was for service. For example, back in the day, let's say a service tech in Canada fixed a problem or found an issue and they would document it locally, which was great for that location, but a service center in San Diego would have had no idea. But now with these new AI tools, any service center location that has a fix or a correction or an important note, that'll be logged and stored, and then it's shared with all service center locations instantly. And not only that, but customer complaints and or solutions are also being logged and integrated into this knowledge database. And Lars said, as a result, service wait times are coming down. And so back to Tesla's new AI spend cap, we just don't know the details. Maybe it's for certain teams. Maybe there are certain performance requirements. And with everything, we know there are exceptions to the rule. And I think one of the biggest ones will be that these engineers can use something like Grok Build or Grok 4.5 while it's technically in that beta phase. And all of that usage does not count toward the $200 per week cap. So really, there are likely numerous workarounds, and this is ultimately Tesla just doing what it does best, focusing on efficiency and capital control. And look at what Elon said about Grok 4.5. Next month's release will be another step change and improvement as we close the loop on solving real-world engineering problems at Tesla, SpaceX, Neuralink, and the Boring Company. Right here, Grok 4.5 is built for real-world engineering. So today we're going to touch a little bit on different benchmarks and help you understand what they mean, but at the end of the day, this is a huge distinction. Elon also said we're closing the loop on real-world usefulness, not benchmarks. Hardcore engineers at Tesla and SpaceX find Grok 4.5 genuinely useful, which is what actually matters. And there's a reason I've been so adamant about encouraging all of you to start vibe coding, to start doing a bit more than just using these LLMs as a chat tool. If you haven't yet done that, all of this won't really make a lot of sense about why it's such a big deal and how it's going to change things. But just know, as these Tesla and SpaceX and Neuralink engineers begin working with tools like Grok 4.5 and the corresponding harness, which, if you're not familiar, is basically the tool set that gives these LLMs and these models the ability to actually do work. That real-world engineer use and feedback is going to become a very useful training tool for future models to understand how actual problems are being solved by world-class engineers. And it'll become alpha at companies like Tesla and SpaceX as it's been trained on actual problems. And over time, it learns the company's systems and strengths and weaknesses and is continually improving them. Yoon Tasai, a Tesla engineer, said the real-world engineering includes identifying issues in manufacturing processes for my teams, which in itself is a giant tree and a lot of dependencies like parts, firmware changes, etc. One emphasis I gave to XAI teams is that I don't really care about the benchmark score, but rather if I can be productive at my job. It's a model that optimizes for real-world use, not the benchmark. Yoon Tasai also said, I appreciate the many XAI and Cursor engineers who dedicated their time to addressing feedback from Tesla. Grok Build was not a thing back then. It was a very primitive client with lots of rough edges, but had a lot of potential. When building from scratch, the only limit is imagination armed with first principles. We encountered many unique use cases to solve diverse workflows, and the teams took prompt feedback and addressed it quickly. to the point that it became an indispensable tool. Now, when my teams need to ask questions, instead of jumping through hoops with various backends or plugins or skills, Grok 4.5 can directly deliver deep insights with minimal setup. I won't comment too much on the model itself because it's only been out for 24 hours or so, but we need to highlight the pricing here. For 1 million tokens of input, it's $2. Whereas for 1 million tokens of output, it's $6. But that's only for a context window under 200,000. The moment you go above, those rates go to $4 per 1 million tokens in and $12 per 1 million tokens out. But look at the comparison for Claude. For 1 million input tokens, it's $10. And for 1 million output tokens, it's $50. So Claude's input output is 1050 and Grok 4.5 is 26. And if you say, well, Dylan, right now Grok 4.5's context window is only 500,000 tokens, which really isn't that big. I would say I agree, but Elon just said 4.5's context window will upgrade to 1 million probably by next week. And again, back to Yoon Tasai, he said most tasks should not need millions of tokens to solve. Most models are overthinking. Here's a great example of that from artificial analysis, token usage per task. And yes, artificial analysis is an independent outlet. We have Opus 4.8 in the Claude code harness coming in at 9.2 million tokens per task, whereas Grok 4.5 in the Grok build harness comes in at 1.9 million tokens per task. Roughly a half order of magnitude outperformance by Grok. Cursor put out this blog post with this chart. Just look at the cost per task. Fable 5 Max came in at $17.32. Grok 4.5 was at $1.51. An actual order of magnitude outperformance by Grok. And as you can see, it was significantly better than any other model on this list. The only other competition was Grok 4.5 on medium and low. But it's important to point out, Grok 4.5 has an advantage on Cursor Bench. An earlier snapshot of the Cursor codebase was unintentionally included in training. The exact score impact is unclear. That data has been removed for future models. So what exactly does that mean? Well, it means Grok 4.5 was actually trained on the material that that specific test was built on. So Grok 4.5 may have seen the answers or the code during training. And this is important because plenty of people are sharing this Cursor bench score that shows Grok 4.5 high with very similar capability and performance to Fable 5 high, but at a fraction of the cost. But shout out to Cursor and SpaceXAI, they put the asterisk and put the note in there. And the reason being, this result might be more driven by just memorization and recall rather than genuine problem solving. Sadly, most people I'm seeing talking about this have not called that out, but I certainly think it's worth it and it's good to understand. And to try to make sure everybody's up to speed, so just think of Grok 4.5 and Cursor's Composer 2.5 as the brains or the models, the LLMs, and then separately the actual apps or the engines where you can do work with these brains are things like Grok Build and Cursor. So in Grok Build, you can select different models, same thing with Cursor. And Cursor said, while we trained our previous model, Composer 2.5, to be a coding specialist, for Grok 4.5, we kept the training data mix deliberately broader. This involved drawing on high-quality STEM tasks, research papers, and other knowledge work, so the model gained proficiency across a wide range of domains. Grok 4.5 and Composer 2.5 are two different model weight classes, and we're excited to support both sizes and weights. Composer 2.5 will remain offered, and we will release new models of that size going forward. And the main takeaway for Grok 4.5, as Elon said, it's an Opus class model, but faster, more token efficient, and lower cost. I also wanted to highlight Grok 4.5 is built on a 1.5 trillion parameter V9 foundation and trained with some data from Cursor. For context, Grok 4.3 was roughly 500 billion parameters, so this is certainly a new, bigger model. However, important to note, this Cursor data was only used for some of the later stages of the training process, meaning some of the improvements from what Cursor brought to the table have not yet been realized. And again, token efficiency is the headline. On one benchmark, Grok 4.5 resolves tasks using an average of 15,900 output tokens against 67,000 for Opus 4.8 on the same bench, a 4.2x gap. And as we know, this is only the first release after the Cursor acquisition. And sure, it won't officially close until Q3, but practically these companies are already moving forward as if it's a done deal. So Grok 4.5 was built primarily for coding, and some things they've been calling out: end-to-end app builds from a single prompt, any Excel work that involves web research, multi-sheet formulas, and left behind notes for future reference, building in Word and PowerPoint. And even though it's a coding first model, it's apparently ranking #1 on Harvey's legal agent benchmark, which just means from a legal law perspective, it's scoring incredibly well, top of class. And just FYI, how to access Grok 4.5, well, if you're not using the CLI or the terminal, you could just download the Cursor app and use it in there. And you'll also find Composer 2.5 and the new GPT 5.6 Soul. But I did want to point out on some of these benchmarks, you'll see Grok 4.3 here. This one's the Artificial Analysis Intelligence Index. That score was a 38, and fast forward to now, Grok 4.5 is the fourth best from this perspective with a score of 54. Trailing only Fable 5, Opus 4.8, and GPT 5.5. But rather than getting technical with these benchmarks, just take away the significant jump in performance. Last year, when everybody was writing off Elon and XAI, saying they're way too far behind and this is a new world for Elon, I'm like, guys, everybody needs to relax. We're in the first few minutes of the first quarter here. Let's give Elon some time to reorganize XAI, maybe make some acquisitions. And I was very confident at some point in the near future, they would be near the frontier, and here we are. And they're near the frontier at a fraction of the cost at much faster speeds. And it's comical to me because nearly every time I make a comment like that, you'll have some people saying, oh, this guy's just an Elon stan. To which I would say, yeah, I am a big Elon fan, but I also like to think I'm mostly objective, and I've just seen his track record for the better part of 10 years. And I understand he is the best magnet for attracting top tier talent. And it's become such an overused cliche, but seriously, that's what it boils down to. Why is anyone betting against this man? So I put it on record on X. I want to put it on record here. By 2028, all other AI companies will be chasing down SpaceXAI on the Pareto frontier. And I think one of the most interesting angles here that I'm not seeing covered elsewhere, the way SpaceX is going to vertically integrate through the Cursor vessel. Think about this. For years, every single line of Cursor code basically sat on top of Microsoft's GitHub. If you're not familiar, it's basically a repository where you can store code. But guess what? Cursor has another product it's been developing called Origin that is a direct competitor to GitHub. And yes, of course, that's now under the SpaceX umbrella. And the differentiator, Origin, was built from scratch to treat AI agents as the primary committers rather than the exception, meaning the entity that would actually commit the code to the repository. Now, going any deeper here is probably a bit beyond the scope of this channel, but just know there are some very interesting things happening in this world as well. And the point you cannot miss, the training data relationship with SpaceX is the detail that carries the most strategic weight. Cursor's commercial platform generates real developer workflow sessions, the full context of how these engineers describe requirements, iterate on bugs, navigate code bases, and refine AI responses across extended conversations. That data reflects actual coding reasoning, not just finished code. By training on that signal, SpaceX gains something qualitatively different from scraping public GitHub repositories. And once this acquisition is finalized, again in Q3, that training pipeline will belong to SpaceX entirely. As if we needed another accelerant, just think about all of the Tesla and SpaceX engineers using these models built for exactly the problems they are working on, having all of that data flywheel continually feed into new models and train new, bigger, more capable models. The productivity per engineer is going to be on a steady upward climb, and as we covered at the beginning of the episode, paired with the new cost efficiencies of Grok 4.5, that performance improvement is likely to come at a fraction of the cost of the competition. Now you say, wait a second, Dylan, the competition can just use Grok models. Why, yes they can, but guess where that money flows to? SpaceX. And did I forget to mention that SpaceX is planning on launching a new model model every month from here forward. Elon reposted this that said the 2 trillion parameter foundation model is expected to finish training this month and become available to customers next month. We know SpaceXAI is working on internally developed C and C++ inference mapped directly to GB300 hardware from NVIDIA, which could double the speed or more. And now that's debatable, but a topic for another day. So as crazy as it sounds, the pace of innovation from SpaceXAI is likely only getting started with the accelerant that is Cursor, its data, and its team. And Grok 4.5 was not built with benchmarks as the priority, but as Elon shared, it looks like 4.5's number one on at least a few benchmarks, better than expected. But most importantly, I've been listening to as many software engineers as possible share their actual real-world experience with 4.5, and by and large, the takeaway was they're enjoying it and they are rather impressed. And the sentiment is that SpaceXAI now belongs in the conversation at the forefront. Not yet from a raw intelligence standpoint, but really from many of the factors that matter most. Because guys, we have to be real. 95%, if not higher, percent of applications does not need that true frontier level raw intelligence. It usually boils down to things like context window management and cost per token and so on. And many of you will roll your eyes at this, but just to understand how Elon's thinking right now, he said, "You don't seem to understand that SpaceX will be worth more than the rest of Earth if we accomplish our goals." So look, that might be 20 plus years away. It may never happen, but the path is there. We actually got an important anecdote from the information about Tesla's robotaxi launch in Miami.
They also kind of in the lead up to it, I found from talking to some sources at the company that like there was a smaller test driver team in the city leading up to the launch. So a year ago when Tesla launched in Austin, they had more than 300 drivers. In the weeks leading up, they brought in people from all across the country that they were working with to test out the area for the robotaxi. But that was much smaller in Miami, which was an interesting development and kind of like an evolution of the, of their work with the robotaxi. It's also kind of reflective of Elon Musk's kind of view for the robotaxi. He has said that like he wants the software to be able to deploy, without having to test everywhere it goes. So he wants the cameras and the AI system to be able to figure out roads that it's never driven before, on the first go. And, obviously they did have test drivers in Miami in the lead up, but like maybe having less is kind of another step towards that.
I have been eagerly awaiting any type of news about this because the huge question for Tesla right now is when it comes to scaling robotaxi, at what point can they reduce the validation needed in each new city? So we did not get a number for the number of safety drivers and testers for Miami, but we know it was less than the 300 they had in Austin. So it's a step in the right direction, but I have to admit there are plenty of questions. We know the geofence in Miami right now is quite small, maybe around 15 square miles. The number of vehicles is likely also small, most likely under 10. And so who knows, maybe cities in other states, the number of safety drivers before the launch goes back up. But hopefully the trend continues, less validation in each new city required. And Chris said FSD would be great if you could talk to the car and tell it which driveway to pull into, or to say things like it's the White House on the left just past the SUV, and then have FSD remember it for next time. Ashok responded to that saying, "Working on it." My little brain has a tough time understanding how the guardrails will work with something like this. If somebody's on the highway and they realize, oh wow, I want to take this exit, and they scream, hey, take this exit, and the car darts over. Obviously, there needs to be limitations in guardrails, so yes, allowing these features would be incredible, but let's not forget, we've already lost our speed control, and Tesla said the reason was it made the model too complicated. So admittedly, I'm a bit skeptical Tesla would open up the model so much to allow for all of this new user input that could be any type of input, potentially from bad actors, but I know nothing compared to Ashok, so incredibly eager to see what they come up with. Today, the head of NHTSA said the agency will absolutely consider ending requirements that driverless cars include steering wheels in a potential boost for Tesla and other autonomous companies. He said if you're developing a vehicle that's designed never to be driven by a human operator, it doesn't make any sense to require manual controls. So the brake pedal requirement already has legislation legislation that's being reviewed, but now for the steering wheel, this is just a comment. As far as we know, there's no legislation yet backing this up. But it sounds like this will be one of the next things on the list to remove. We now have QX Logistics placing an order for 20 Tesla semis. This company runs 4 warehousing and fulfillment sites across the LA basin and keeps its own truck fleet on the road for port drayage, middle mile hauls, and regional freight stretching from Southern California into the Intermountain West. And yes, this will be through the fleet enabler for mobility that we've covered in the past. So this QX Logistics is actually a new customer of not just Tesla, but of Forum Mobility. You'll recall that's the transportation as a service company. QX said, "We appreciate the partnership and can't wait to get these Tesla semis on the road in 2027. Remember, Lars said most of the allocation for the Tesla semis for this year is already accounted for." And on the semi tracker, that takes the total confirmed orders, as far as we know publicly, to 666. So somebody please place another order soon. Not a Tesla app had some exclusive reporting today about the Cybercab. They said new details indicate a major hardware upgrade is tucked into the upcoming vehicle. This to provide pinpoint location mapping. According to info received from a reliable source, production units of the Cybercab are equipped with a more powerful dual GPS configuration. Now it's not clear if that means the vehicle features a dual band system for locking onto multiple satellite frequencies at once, or if it packs 2 separate physical GPS units for redundancy and improved triangulation. Either way, the insider confirmed this updated layout results in a much more accurate positioning than what current consumer vehicles can pull off. And we know the Model Y robotaxi vehicles currently deployed, which are internally called Project Halo, they have that communication and telematics hardware in the rear, located in what many call that black box. And that hardware provides GPS redundancy and improves location tracking, and likely also includes communications equipment to keep the vehicles in touch with robotaxi support. So of course the Cybercab needs to know exactly where it's at in the world, but I also think this might have to do with remote operations as well. We've heard there were 2 instances where remote operators were tasked with moving the vehicle remotely and they ultimately moved it into an object. So was that because of lag, or was that because the GPS positioning was a bit off? Just know that reasoning rationale is pure speculation on my part. Today, Tesla said the Model Y was Netherlands' best-selling vehicle in the first half of this year across all fuel types. Tesla stock closed the day at $406.55, up 3.17%, and SpaceX closed the day at $152.16, up 2.6%. This while the NDX was up 1.62%. Hope you all have a wonderful day, and a huge thank you to all of my Patreon supporters.